welcome back. I'm sure you're all tired of watching me do ambassadors, but you know what? Why not? Today I have a record 61. This one was made in, it looks like 2005, going by the foot number. It starts with a 15. They did make two different variants of these. They had another model that came out in 2011, I want to believe, but this is a 2005 model. Just going to go through, do a basic cleaning and service of it. Doesn't feel like it needs anything. See how the spool moves? It's alright. It could be better. I'm going to go ahead and get into this guy, and we'll go ahead from there and get her apart, clean it up, and see how it does after. What's really interesting about the Record versus something like a C3 or a C4 is it's kind of like a hybrid design, I would say, because the C3 and C4 have a spool axle, where the spool doesn't have an integrated shaft. It spins on an axle, which at the time when that design was released in '91, it made for a lighter spool. So at that time you were getting spools that weighed virtually nothing compared to what competing models were. But this one actually works both ways. I'll show you. As you can see, this isn't notched to go into a retaining clip under the spool cap. This one's a little bit different. There is an anti-reverse bearing that's inside of the spool, and I'll go into detail on what the function of that is as I'm going along here. But I'm just going ahead, taking apart the spool. There is a bushing in here. I know some people upgrade that to a bearing, but that is unnecessary with the way that this reel functions. Take out the spool bushing. I'm going to go ahead and clean all these in alcohol. Get that out of the way. Let's go ahead and grab my flat blade. I'm not prying, but I'm just using it to get under it a little bit and hold it with my thumb until the brake pops off. Ooh, this one's on here good. Usually they pop right off. There it goes. Got it. And what's interesting is that these brakes, this one it's a 6-pin now. They started using this about that time, and they eventually worked this 6-pin brake into some of their other models, like the C3 and the C4. And what's interesting is that it doesn't have a bearing cushion in it like the C3 and C4 does, so the spool always has a little bit of a lateral play inside. Just trying to get that bearing out. Let me grab my bearing pulling tweezers, get that in there, and there we go, we got it now. But if you can see inside of the spool, there's a little anti-reverse bearing in there. And the way that this works, you can actually see the face of the bearing right there. Well, the way that this works is when you're retrieving a lure, the spool is spinning on this axle, so it's spinning backwards. And if I can show you, it's all, both the spool and the shaft are spinning now. But when it's going forward, the anti-reverse, it has more stability when you're retrieving a bait or fighting a fish, and it makes it more surely rigid. Now the spool, it is a ported spool, and it is less capacity than what a 6500 would be. Let's go ahead and weigh it real quick and see how much this spool actually weighs that's on here. I'm going to guess it's right around 20 grams. Ooh, I was way off, 26. So this isn't going to be anything for throwing lighter baits, of course, but the way that this thing works, it's a distance machine. That's something, if you're fishing inshore or anything like that, this is what you're going to want to run. Just going to continue and put parts where they need to go in my tray so I can continue to get them all cleaned up. Go ahead and take off the handle retaining plate. Now on these left-hand retrieve models, it is reverse thread, so to loosen, I actually have to go right with it. And the same thing for the star wheel. They do it so when you're manipulating the star wheel, it's going to go forward to increase the drag or backwards to decrease it. We can pull the handle, friction washer, star wheel. I always like these big arm star wheels. I wouldn't mind putting one on a smaller reel, like a 4500 or something like that. I can go and pull the bridge screws. Those are in there pretty good. I can go ahead and pull this brake plate or the side plate off. Remove the Belleville washers in the reverse sleeve. And I believe that, I want to say this was actually the first Ambassador to have a carbon drag from the factory. So as I take this apart, we're going to take a look in there and see what it is. Yep, it's carbon. And then the bottom one, I believe, is going to either be leather or Delrin or something like that. But I'm just going to put these carbon ones off to the side because I'm going to lubricate those. This reel doesn't look like it saw too much use because typically dry carbon washers, they will wear to a shine if they're not oiled or anything, especially under extensive use. That does get mitigated if you're fishing them greased. They'll pretty much last indefinitely under that sort of thing. Yeah, this is definitely a leather washer right here. And that base washer acts more of a spacer. Like, if you look at the inside of the gear, how it's round versus here's the pressure plate, and you can see how that's keyed. So when a fish is pulling drag, this whole drive gear is spinning, and so does that base washer that's on there because it's not keyed, so it only functions as a spacer. It's not really adding any usable drag pressure to it, that I would say. Gear's looking pretty good shape. There's no brittling on the drive gear. Pinion gear, just a little bit greasy, but I don't see any brittling on here either. So those gears are in good shape. Pinion yoke, that's off. Go ahead and disassemble the rest of the brake plate here. And we get the base shim. I'll go over there, that's all done. And then gotta pull the spool bearings. Now it's interesting compared to a C3. Notice how there's a spool bearing under there. The spool bearings on the records, those are inside the side plates, not inside the spool itself. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove the retaining clip. Put that over there. Push out the bearing. That side plate's good. Drive shaft. Yeah, you can definitely tell there was hardly any use on this. There's a lot of times you'll see this is just oil that's in here, but a lot of the times you'll see where that copper shim is dimpled from when somebody turns the spool tension up high on it. Now I can get to the other side. I do want to say that this is a 6.3 to 1 reel, but the newer model, well, it's 14 years old by now. The 2011 model has 6.8 to 1 gears, which are good for about 33 inches per turn on this platform. And they are very hard to get. I've been trying to get a couple sets of them for some projects of my own, but the last place I ordered them from, I guess they said that they're not doing them right now because Abu's moving their facility over to Poland. So I'm just going to have to wait a little bit until I can be able to get a hold of those gears again. Go ahead and remove the level wind. That's why I like to see the pawl just falls right out. Sometimes they're stuck in there because they're all greased up, and I can pull the worm gear. And this one I'm kind of surprised that they didn't put the bearing worm gear in this, but that's alright. For as good as this thing moves, I don't think that's even necessary. Take our line guide, and then here's something that can trip up some people. Now, this idler gear right here that drives the level wind, it's a press fit. So some people take an X-Acto knife and they'll go ahead and they'll cut the top and put an E-clip on there to secure it like how they used to in the old days. But what I do is I don't know if you can see this, but there's some probably 50-pound braid, and I wrap it around my wrench, and I can make like a loop that goes under the cogwheel. Now what I do is I just wind it up and then give it a pull, and that pops right off. Because if you put any kind of lateral pressure on there, you can bend that pin out that's on there, the stud that locates that. And then it is a bearing supported cog, so there's the bearing for it. And we can get to the last side plate bearing here. Pull that clip up. I'm unsure what bearings that Abu was using at the time when they made this. I know a lot of spots they'll use NMB, or even at the time I think Abu was using SKF bearings. These bearing pulling tweezers I made, they work pretty damn good. I just took and bent the tips right out, and it's good for getting in there. Alright, now it's all disassembled, and I can go ahead and start cleaning it up. Get these screws out of the way so they don't get lost. And as usual, I use mineral spirits just with a toothbrush. We'll clean up all this old grease on here. And what else I'm going to do, that brake ring, I'm going to take some metal polish and go around on that, because it'll give it more consistent braking power instead of having that somewhat rough surface that's on there. I'll go ahead and do that. Just need to get, I do use semi-chrome for this step. There's a lot of suitable metal polishes you can use for this. Blue Magic, you can get it at an auto parts store, semi-chrome, Brasso, any of that stuff. And remember, you're not really trying to move any material from it. You're just trying to remove any kind of imperfect surface finish or anything like that. You can use something abrasive if you wish. If you do, I'd go with something that's lightly abrasive, like Blue Jeweler's Rouge or something. But I'm just going to take and polish that brake ring on there. This is going to be able to give it more consistent braking power. Just work my way around, and you can see how black that Dremel bit is getting. It's a wool polishing cylinder that I have on there. Go back the other way a few times. Alright, So we got that, and what I'm going to do is just take a Q-tip and remove any residue that's around here. Not too much in it. You can see how all the residue, but look at that thing, it's all nice and shiny now, so it's going to be some good consistent braking on there. Go around the inside where the pinion goes, just in case I got any stuff there. Alright, that one's out of the way. And what else I'm going to do is clean out the shims that are in here. So what I'm going to do is get a little bit of alcohol, just so I can remove any old oil that's on there. Go through, run it around. This stuff's going to dry off pretty quick, so I'm not going to need to walk this over the air compressor or anything like that. Then I'm going to do the same for the spool cap. Just remove that old oil that's in there. Alright, not too bad. Now since I have this open, I'm just going to go ahead and drop my bearings in it. And then that bushing as well. Now I think about it, I should put the level line in there too. Just because the reason why I'm putting the worm gear in there is dirt does get under that white collar and it does become a friction point. So I'm just going to go ahead and let this hang out in ultrasonic for a little bit. Finish cleaning up the rest of the parts. Oh, you know what? I missed a bearing. I knew it was a little bit light on the bearings. I was thinking to myself, I feel like I'm missing one. Well, there it was. It was hiding underneath the drive gear. Back in you go. I can continue with these other parts. I like to take the toothbrush, go in between the teeth with it, and get any of that old grease out. This is also a good time to check for burnling. What burnling is gear wear. So a lot of times you'll see it if it's discolored or anything like that. When it gets discolored, then that means that the surfaces are uneven, and gear can still be functional, it's just not going to be as smooth. Usually where you're going to find that is if you're one of them kind of people that likes to really crank down their drag or reel against a fish that's fighting you, and that's where a lot of it comes from. And usually when it happens, it's going to be on the pinion gear, not so much on the drive gear, but it does happen at times to drive gears as well. Go ahead and clean up this pinion. I feel like this particular reel, the Record series, especially the more contemporary one, they also made them back in the 50s, but these newer ones, this is probably, to me, with what Abu has done as far as the Ambassador goes, this is probably like peak engineering for the 4,000 to 6,000 size. They also made them in, you could get them in a 4600 size in this generation. I think in the successive generation from 2011, I don't believe they made any that were in that size. They are either a 5600 or a 6600. But now go ahead and scrub all the grease off of this guy. It's hard to say what grease that Abu was using too, because I've opened some of them that had blue grease, some had green grease, some had, like this one for instance, has brown grease in it. So I don't think they're really using anything too specific to their product line. Like with pen models, for instance, you open them up, they all have that characteristic pen blue grease in them. But I never saw anything like that with an Ambassadeur. It's always blue, green, or brown. One of the three. This stuff's proving a little bit stubborn to remove them over here, trying to get the teeth that actually drive the level line. But pretty sure I got it now. I can just go through with a foam swab, get all that dirt out of there. Something else I'm going to do is I'm going to polish that stud that the idler gear runs on. Now when you polish that, it removes, like it does with the brake ring, it's removing any surface imperfections, it's going in making it a much smoother surface for that idler gear to run on. But as you can see, it looks like there's quite a bit of oxidation on there. So I'm going to go ahead and wipe it real quick, free of any oil that may have been on it. You can see there it is. Go ahead and get out my semi-chrome. Now you don't need too much of this stuff. If you put it on your pad and you hit your Dremel and it's flinging everywhere, you got too much. So I'm just going to go ahead in here and go around this area. You can see it's turning black, the same pattern as the actual stud itself. Now it's going to be nice and shiny, which is exactly what I'm looking for. You get that shine, then that means you have a perfectly clean surface for that idler gear to go onto. There we go. Look at that thing, all nice and sparkly, just how we want it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of TSI on that stud, because it's only a single bearing that's on that idler gear. Now, aftermarket companies and Abu themselves, they also make a double bearing variant that can move pretty good, but I'm just going to take this swab and some TSI, go around this top part here and a little bit around the bottom. Remember, a little bit of this stuff goes a long way. That's why I didn't just straight drop it on there, because we don't want to bind anything up. Well, it wouldn't really bind anything, but it wouldn't move it as fast as it normally should. Go ahead and finish cleaning up the rest of the stuff. This thing is pretty clean, so it doesn't seem like it's been used too terribly much, but that's alright. I'm just going and cleaning the inside of the drive shaft where there's probably going to be grease residue, and there is a little but not much. pull the back side of the Q-tip out here. That's what was in the first pass. So that one's ready to go. Bearings are still cooking. They got about 10 minutes to go. And I'll just finish up this guy here. Here's our level line pipe. I'm just going to take and run a little bit of mineral spirits through the bushing, this little plastic bushing at the end. I'll get a little bit on there. That was pretty clean inside, and I can go and get the rest of it, what's inside. Any grease or oil. And something else I'm going to do, because this doesn't have a double bearing level lined, or even a single one at that, I'm going to polish the worm gear bushing, the very end that goes into this plastic piece here. So that's going to be polished to better mitigate friction. Just going through now and scrubbing off the pinion gear for the spool. Not too much more to go. I should be done cleaning up the rest of this stuff by the time when that timer on the ultrasonic stops for me. If you're wondering why I get so many ambassadors, is it's kind of what I'm known for. Kind of back, God, 7-8 years ago, I started out on a local web forum, Michigan Sportsman, and I wasn't even looking to do this at the level I do now. I was just like, oh cool, I got these cool reels that I built, I'm gonna show them to people. And then I started getting messages, do you do this for money? And at first I was like, I don't know if I should do it, and I decided, you know, why not? What do I have to lose? And I get them from all over now, not just local, but I got some in right now that are out of Texas. I got some from Tennessee. I've gotten them various places around the country. Kind of fell into this. My uncle, when he passed away about 20 years ago, he was a big Ambassador guy. And my aunt called me up one day and she says, hey, come get some of your uncle's fishing stuff. Leave some behind for your cousin because you guys are splitting it. I said, all right. So I took a ride over there and he had some Ambassadors. And when I was a kid, I used to drool over them looking at like the Bass Pro and Cabela's catalogs. And I was like, man, I can't believe I got one of these now. And I started looking around how to service them online, and checking around and seeing what people were charging at the time. And I was like, because first I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to break something. And so I started watching stuff. This was before YouTube existed, so I'd watch some videos of people doing this, and that's how I started out. Started joining other message boards and getting to know people on them and fixing their stuff. After a few years, I became a business. And even on some web page or web forums that I'm on, it's like, that's what I'm known for. Kind of fell into it by accident, but what can you do? I have fun doing it. Just going through now and cleaning up the line guide and cap for that, and gotta make sure we get it squeaky clean, because that's when they run the best. I feel like at the factory when these things were made, they kind of greased them in a manner for people that didn't really maintain their stuff, because like you look at a lot of spots that they grease or use way too much or really don't even need it in the first place, and it robs of performance. I mean, yeah, a lot of people, like, you can look at old web forum postings from 20 plus years ago, and you'd see quite a few people like, yeah, when I get my Ambassador, I just pull the brake blocks off and it casts really good. And that to me just says, hey, I was over lubricating somewhere, so we're not going to, we don't need to run brake blocks because the thing's already slowed up enough to where it's unnecessary. But I don't know, some manufacturers do stuff like that. Too much, not enough. Maybe it's just me saying that because it's not the way that I would do it, whereas somebody else it might be perfectly acceptable. That's a possibility, but still going through here and cleaning up these drag discs, the metal ones. Almost at the end of the cleaning project here. Right now I'm onto the Belleville washers, or the spring washers as the real manufacturers call them. It's just the part that creates the tension when you're pushing down on the drag star. Looks like the cleaner's just got a few more minutes to go, so I'm making good time. Once those bearings are and level winder done, I'm going to go ahead and blow the bearings out with compressed air, and then I can get this thing back together. I still want to polish that worm gear bushing too, so don't want to forget that. Just cleaning whatever's on the position holder. That's what holds down the pinion yoke. Alright, looks like I got everything ready to go. I can get started on this brake plate in the meantime. Put that side plate over here. And then here I can go ahead and grease her all up what she needs. I am using NLGI1 for this. It's one I use often, as you know. It's going to give a nice smooth feel to it. Just need to get everything ready for the rest of the parts here. Go and get the top of the clutch arm here. The cleaner is finished. I'm just going to go ahead and grease this guy up real quick. I can go ahead and put down the drive shaft. Spins good. While that's waiting, I'm just going to go ahead and get those bearings and that bushing out of there. And the worm gear. Blow them out with some compressed air. Ooh, that stuff is pretty dirty in there. I mean, that's all the stuff that was in there. All nice and dirty. Now it's going to be much better now that it's all cleaned up. Get to blowing these guys out. Just making sure I get all that alcohol out of here. Alright, we got it. I see I dripped a little bit of water on the brake plate. That's not going to hurt anything. I'll just take a little bit of a paper towel here and sop that up. There we go. Good as new. Alright, now I'm just going to continue on with the brake plate. Use a little bit of NLGI1 on this base washer. And what I'm going to do is grease that guy up in the middle there. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use number 2 on the teeth on this one, just because they're a harder cut tooth versus something that has like micro gearing in it, where I'd want to use something a little bit different. Set this guy down here. I'm actually going to turn off the air compressor because mine's got like a small leak in it somewhere I gotta fix. So in order to avoid that thing kicking on repeatedly, I'll just come over, and if I need to use it again, which I don't think I will, have to use it for the rest of this build. But let me put this one down. I'm just putting some NLGI1, so this thing is going to work good in the cold weather also. I have this eared washer. If you notice how some of the washers are eared and some are keyed, it's they do that because the way the drag works is the ones that are keyed, they stay steady to the rotation of the drive shaft, whereas the ones that have holes in them don't. Now the ones with holes in them or the ones without holes are the ones that are gonna stay stationary, and that's where the friction's gonna come from. I'll go ahead and put the pressure plate on, and I'll go back to the one, a little bit here, around that, and I can get my pinion yoke, put a little bit of grease in there. This will set right down here. A little bit more right up here where the position holder rides. I can take our position holder and set that down. Alright, that part's good. And now I can go ahead and put a little bit of drop. I think for this one I'm just going to use a teeny tiny bit of ISO 22 because I really want this thing to scream along. And I can go ahead and put the cogwheel back in. And this one's just actually I do have to put the spool bearing in first, so or else I can't get the cogwheel in. Spool bearing, spool bearing, spool bearing, and I'll get that one later. Let's drop in the bearing. Get our little bearing retainer. This guy just pops right in. I really like how Abu does these with the bearing retainers. It makes it so much easier than like those clips that Daiwa and Shimano use. Oh yeah, that thing's moving good. This thing is going to be able to cast pretty far out there, so that's what I was looking for. Go ahead and put the other spool bearing in while I'm thinking about it. I can go ahead and put the tension cap on. I'm actually going to put a teeny tiny drop of oil here. I am using the ISO 22. Put a little drop of oil right here on this O-ring too, because it keeps them from dry rotting. Alright, something that I did forget to do was clean out the anti-reverse. So I'm going to do that right now. Just get my foam swab, run it around in there. Actually, it's pretty clean. Not bad. I can get the residue here. Get that out. I'm actually going to blow this anti-reverse bearing out because I'm putting it back together. Usually I do this early on in the disassembly process. I usually do it earlier in the process because then it's dry by the time I end up getting to it. But I just need to put a little bit of oil on there. And in reverse, I always like to use Corrosion X. No specific reason. I guess I'd just been using it for so long. I kind of became a habit with it. So a couple little swabs around there with the Corrosion X. Now I can put my top on there. Put our bridge screws back in. Kind of surprised that, speaking of this ultracast style, kind of wonder why Abu never, why they never did that to the 2500C or anything, or the 1500C, because it probably wouldn't have been too hard for them to make it into a ultracast style. Just going by what the actual architecture is of the reel. Alright, and I got the brake back on there and the bearing and the bushing. So this one's almost ready. Set that there, and so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to polish this end of the worm gear. Just move that out of the way. Get myself a little bit of semi-chrome, because this is going to make it a little bit easier, or it'll spool a little bit better, which is what we're looking for. You just take that and, oh, put a little too much on there, but I'm just going to go ahead and go right around here with it. I kind of think that this worm is, they used to be brass, so I'm wondering if this one's actually steel or something. Didn't mean to floor it on the Dremel there, but I was going to set it down and kind of got away from me. There we go, nice and shiny. So that thing's not going to get much of any friction on there. Then what I'm going to do is go ahead and get this guy together. Put a teeny tiny drop of ISO 22 on there. A little bit there. Got it. Go ahead and slide this into our, actually that worm shield's a little bit dirty on the outside. So I'm just going to go ahead and wipe that off real quick. Okay. Go ahead, get that in. Alright, that thing spins pretty good. That's what we want. Now, because I'm right-handed, I'm going to have fun getting this back in. Left-handed reels, I mean, yeah, they're mostly the same as right-handed ones, but you're kind of doing it with the wrong hand. Well, that's how I feel about it anyways. I'll go ahead and get this right in there. I can take our little worm gear retainer. Got that in. I'll take some more of the 22 here and put that inside of where the actual line guide goes. I'll drop this guy in. There we go. Put another drop right on the bottom there. I'll put on the spool cap, or the level line cap. I'm going to put a couple of drops of the 22 right here on the worm gear. One there, two there. Okay. I'm just going to move this thing around a little bit just to get that oil distributed. Get that oil flowing. Alright, so that's good. Well, I'll go ahead and put this side plate back together. This is for the bait clicker. It's going to go here, that one there, and then you have these spacers that keep it from rattling around. If you notice too, when I put in the level line cogwheel, the white gear that's on the side plate, I don't lubricate those. That's it's nylon. It's not going to wear down too bad. I mean, I've done some of these that were owned by the original owner years ago. They sent them to me. I went through, redid them. I get them back a few years later. There's no wear on them. The only time that happened where I did see one that was broken was a customer of mine pinched his finger in a level line. Well, some guys will say, well, they need to make that out of metal. Well, the thing that they don't tell you is that that's a safety feature. If you get your finger pinched in there and you have a metal idler gear that's running level line, you better hope the guy that's fishing with you knows how to take reels apart, because it's going to hurt it's going to hurt for a long time. By the time the ambulance gets you to the hospital, we'll get a reel removed from your finger. So in order to save the trouble, plus it's also lighter than the metal one, and keeps things moving nicely. I'm just going ahead and buttoning this guy up. Almost there. Now I can take my little friction washer and put that here. We'll take our handle, set that there, Now we need our little E-clip. Got that. Now we can put the nut on there. Now these threads on these drive shafts are pretty big threads, so just make sure you're not cross-threading when you put it on there. We're in the home stretch. I can pop the axle in there. I'll take the spool. Now we can button this guy back up. Having trouble because I'm right-handed and I'm used to doing right-handed reels so much. But there we go. Go ahead, tighten up these thumb nuts. Alright, now we're going to see how it spins. Oh yeah, that feels way better than what it did originally. So let's see what we get. Now remember, this is a heavy spool, even though it's shallow, so this thing's not gonna do any kind of crazy stuff like a BFS spool would. Make sure the clicker works. It does. Oh, there we go. Popular reel for carp and catfish people. That's exactly what we want. Well, hopefully everybody watching liked my video of Ambassadeur Record 61. If you have any questions, comments, you know how to find me. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.